My beloved child, be cautious. There is a man in your life, a name that, when the truth is finally uncovered, will astonish even you. Not because I desire to wound you, but because you have drawn too close to something that was never meant to belong to you. You have grown accustomed to that presence, to the point that you mistook it for destiny, for divine arrangement, for an answer to the quiet emptiness within your heart. But hear me, child, not everything that comes near is sent by me, and not every familiar feeling carries life within it. For many weeks, even many months, I have been whispering. I have touched your conscience through the smallest moments, a nameless unease, a joy that never felt complete, a weariness that would not lift no matter how much more you tried to love. I spoke through prayers that no longer brought the peace they once did, through nights when you lay awake wondering why you had to strain so hard simply to keep a connection from collapsing. I was there. I've never left you, but you became so accustomed to the noise that my whisper was drowned out. Today, I no longer whisper. I speak plainly, because the time has come, not to condemn him, and not to accuse you, but to rescue you. For I see that you are slowly trading away the sacred boundaries I placed within you. You have begun to shrink yourself, to silence what needs to be spoken, to tolerate what dries out your soul, simply to hold on to the feeling of not being abandoned. My child, that is not love, and it is certainly not what I desire for you. I know you have told yourself that if you were more patient, if you loved more deeply, if you sacrificed just a little more, everything would change. But hear this truth clearly. I did not create you to carry another person's healing at the cost of your own wounds. I am the healer. I do not ask you to save anyone by losing yourself. When you remain in me, you are free, no longer bound by the fear of loss or the need to prove your worth. Even now, feel my hand resting on your shoulder, not heavy, not forcing, but steady enough for you to know that I am leading you out of a familiar shadow, a shadow you mistook for shelter, but which has been quietly exhausting you. Some things feel deeply familiar, yet were never truly yours. Some people enter your life like a promise, but are in fact only a crossroads where you learn discernment. And some departures are not losses at all, but my mercy at work. You will grieve. I know. You will feel pain, because letting go of hope is often harder than letting go of reality. But my beloved child, I never remove anything from you without intending to lead you into a fuller life. I see the road ahead if you remain where you are. I see the years of striving, self-doubt, quiet erosion, and the slow forgetting of who you are in me. And because I love you, I will not allow that future to continue. My rescue is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives as a quiet awakening, a moment when you suddenly realize that you are no longer living truthfully with yourself. A morning when you wake and sense that, though nothing dramatic has happened, your soul feels heavy. That is when I am calling you back. Not back to the past, but back to truth, where you do not need to shrink in order to be loved. My beloved child, stay with me in this moment. Do not turn away too quickly. Do not let old habits pull you back into a hurried rhythm. Some things can only be understood when you are willing to remain still long enough to listen with your whole soul. What I am about to speak to you does not come to confuse you, but to return you to truth, the truth that will set you free. Even if at first it makes your heart tremble. That man's voice once slipped into the most vulnerable spaces within you. It touched dreams you had long carried, desires you had never spoken aloud to anyone. You believed it was resonance, a sign, something I had sent at the very moment you were weary. But hear me, child, not every voice that matches the rhythm of your heart comes from the light. Some sounds are formed out of lack, out of ambition, out of the need to control, and they can imitate the language of care with great subtlety. I know you once believed. You opened your heart, allowed yourself to hope, and took small steps toward him with the expectation that this time would be different. But his intentions were never aligned with your life, not because he always meant to harm you, but because his soul has never stood under the light of truth. And when a person does not stand in the light, they cannot lead another rightly, no matter how gentle or persuasive their words may be. Top of form, do not be afraid when I speak this plainly. Truth does not come to tear you apart. Truth comes like the hand of a skilled physician, touching the precise place of pain in order to heal it at the root. If I were to let you remain in that haze any longer, you would slowly lose your ability to discern. You would begin to doubt the intuition I placed within you. You would ask yourself whether you are too sensitive, too demanding, too weak, and that is not who I created you to be. My child, I see the moments when you defend that person. I see how you choose silence when your spirit is unsettled. I see how you try to keep the peace by shrinking your own truth. And I also see how exhausted you are from constantly adjusting yourself just to remain. That is not love that causes you to grow. That is a bond that is draining the life from you. Day by day, there will come a moment when a name is spoken. When that name appears, you will be startled, not because you never suspected, but because, at last, every fragment will fall into place. You will understand why the small signs kept repeating, why your soul was never truly at rest, no matter how hard you tried to believe. And in that moment, you may feel pain, but, my beloved child, that very shock is the threshold of freedom. For from the instant you name the truth rightly, the truth can no longer hide. I am not calling you to run away. I am inviting you to walk with me, one breath at a time. There is no need to sever everything in panic, no need to prove anything to anyone. Simply step out of denial and step into the light with gentle courage. I will walk slowly with you. I know how weary you are from carrying things alone for so long. Even now, heaven is opening a scroll written about your life. It is not a book of condemnation, but a book of reordering. Each line is written with care, so that you may read without breaking. I do not unveil everything at once, because I know your limits. I turn each page, one by one, giving your heart time to understand, to receive, and to rise again. In that scroll, I am rewriting the way you see yourself. You are not someone who needs to be chosen by another to have worth. You are not someone who must trade peace in order to keep a connection. You are, my child, chosen before anyone ever knew you. Loved before you managed to do anything right or wrong. When you stand in this identity, every relationship not built on truth will begin to tremble on its own. My child, I know you fear the emptiness that may follow letting go. I know you worry that without that person, you will have to face the silences that were never filled. But hear me, I do not draw you out of something only to leave you alone. I lead you out so I may bring you closer to me, where my presence is fuller than every voice you once clung to. There will come a time when you look back and realize that what you thought was loss was, in truth, release. That the one you tried so hard to keep was not the one who could walk with you into your new season of maturity. And that light never makes you smaller, only darkness forces you to shrink in order to survive. So, my beloved child, do not fear the truth that is coming. Welcome it as a door I am opening. When you step through, you do not lose yourself, you find yourself again, and I will be there, at every step, with every breath, until you stand firmly in the freedom I prepared for you from the very beginning. My beloved child, there were delays you once believed were simply a matter of timing, not yet the right moment, not yet favorable circumstances, or perhaps because you felt you yourself were not yet good enough. But today I draw back the veil and let you see a deeper layer of truth, There were blessings that once stood very close to you, doors that were waiting to open, yet they remained suspended half open because of the influence of a person who did not live fully within the truth. Not because that person was stronger than you, but because their words and actions carried two opposing currents. On the surface, they appeared supportive, while underneath they quietly redirected your path. You sensed this, even though you could not yet give it a name. I know you asked yourself why everything seemed to be held back at the very last moment. You prayed. You waited patiently. You kept your heart upright. And still the outcome did not arrive as you hoped. You were not wrong to ask. Those delays were not punishment, nor were they signs that I had turned away from you. On the contrary, they were proof that I was shielding you from an influence that was not pure. Some things, if opened too soon, would have drawn you in with a heart that had not yet been warned, and the price you would have paid would have been far greater than a temporary season of waiting. That man, I do not mention him so that you would harbor resentment, but so that you may understand, lived with two faces, one that inspired trust, and another that revealed itself only in private choices. You perceived that inconsistency through intuition, through wordless unease, through a weariness you could not explain whenever you were near him or caught within his orbit. You thought perhaps you were being overly sensitive, that you were thinking too much. But no, your soul was trying to speak while your reasoning still hesitated. Yet there was one thing he misjudged, and it is the thing that determined everything. My grace covers your life. Grace is not loud. It does not need to prove itself, but it has the power to stop traps before they fully close. You are not nameless in this world. You belong to me, and those who belong to me are not left at the mercy of double-hearted manipulation before harm becomes irreversible. I act sometimes by slowing things down, sometimes by placing obstacles you do not yet understand in the moment. My child, this is why I have so often told you to keep your eyes open, not so that you would suspect everyone, but so that you would learn discernment. There are eyes that look at you with genuine care, and there are eyes that look at you with the intent to use. There are words of encouragement that carry the breath of life, and there are words that sound good but quietly drain your strength over time. When you were not yet steady, I did not push you into a place where you had to fend for yourself. I held you back. I slowed the pace, so you would not be swept away by what you thought was opportunity but was, in truth, a soft and subtle snare. Do you remember the nights you cried without knowing why? Not because of a specific incident, not because of a clear word that wounded you, but a vague sorrow, as if your soul were carrying a weight it could not name. That was not weakness. It was a signal. Your soul had sensed the conflict between what I was preparing for you and the influence that was trying to intrude. Those tears were not collapse, they were silent prayers, spoken before you knew what to pray for. Now you will begin to understand. You will look back on moments that once seemed meaningless, the plans that fell apart at the last second, the relationships that did not go as far as you expected, the promises that never came to pass, and you will see my hand there, not to take good things away, but to keep what is good from being mixed with falsehood. Some blessings, if they arrive in the wrong environment, become burdens. I love you enough not to give you what you have not yet been protected from the consequences of. My child, I am rescuing you even now. My rescue does not always take the form of a dramatic event. Sometimes it is a gradual clarity. The moment you begin to see what you once excused or overlooked. Sometimes it is the gentle withdrawal of those who no longer have permission to walk with you into the next stretch of the journey. And sometimes it is a strange, quiet peace that appears the moment you decide to stop holding on to what has been draining your soul. You do not need to confront. You do not need to expose. And you do not need to prove that you are right. I do not call you into the light, while asking you to carry bitterness with you. I call you out through awakening. When you stand in truth, what does not belong to truth will withdraw on its own. When you choose life, the currents that drain you will no longer have a lasting place. Remember this, my child, those who are chosen are always rescued before the snare can close, not because they are flawless, but because they belong to me. You were covered even in the days when you did not realize it. And now, as your eyes begin to open, you will no longer weep in confusion. You may weep, but it will be in understanding, in release, in the quiet relief of one who finally knows why they had to move slowly, why they had to wait, why they had to let go of certain things that once seemed so important. My child, what is coming to you is no longer delayed. It is simply being restored to its proper order. And when the door opens this time, it will open in peace, not in turmoil, in truth, not in doubt, in light, not in the double shadows of human ambiguity. I was with you through the long nights, and I will be with you in the new morning, where old tears are understood, and a new path is walked with awakened eyes. My beloved child, I want you to learn a deeper discernment, not so that you become suspicious of words, but so that you recognize the source from which words come. For language can shimmer like water under the morning sun. Yet not every shimmer comes from the sun. There are words arranged skillfully, with gentle rhythm and emotions placed just right, so convincing that you believe you are standing before truth itself. But truth does not only touch the ear, truth lays a foundation beneath your feet. It does not merely stir your heart, it steadies your steps. When words sound beautiful, yet leave behind a vague emptiness, a heaviness you cannot quite name, then you need to pause, not to accuse, but to discern. There are people who learn to speak the way light speaks, yet they do not live in the light. They borrow the vocabulary of hope, assemble it from the experiences of others, and offer it to you as if it were understanding. You listen and feel seen. You listen and hear your dreams called by name. But my child, true understanding does not make you dependent. It opens a door for you to walk through. It does not build a platform where you must stand lower than the one who speaks. Words born of light always lead you toward freedom, freedom to think, freedom to choose, freedom to say no without paying the price of guilt. Words without light are different. They plant in you a vague obligation, an unnamed debt, a feeling that if you leave, you have betrayed something good. Pay attention. Words born of light carry consistency. What is said today remains a line tomorrow. They do not need to adapt themselves to the listener in order to be praised. They do not change shape when the setting changes. By contrast, words without light are flexible in troubling ways, gentle to your face, different behind your back, full of promises when convenient, elusive when it is time to act, emotional diversions when their core is questioned. You are not publicly insulted, but you grow weary. You are not overtly forced, but you are pulled. And with each pull, you lose a bit of clarity, not because you lack wisdom, but because you allowed words to lead where truth should have led. I know you value words. You believe in the healing power of language. You know that a timely sentence can lift an entire day. I do not want you to close yourself off to what is beautiful. I only want you to place what is beautiful under the light. For light does not fear examination. Light does not fear the question. Where will this lead me? Words that carry light do not avoid that question. They welcome it, because they know their path leads to life. Words without light evade it. They change the subject, soften the truth, tell another story so you forget the original question. And when you forget, you continue on, but you walk in mist. My child, there are promises given too early, before any foundation has been laid. There are visions painted wide and grand, yet lacking the honest. Small steps required to reach them. Light does not need to advertise the future. Light tends each step. Words that carry light do not intoxicate you with tomorrow. They anchor you in faithfulness today. Words without light prefer to speak of what is coming so that you overlook what is misaligned now. They cause you to wait for what will be, while what already is begins to crack. And slowly, you name that waiting hope, while your soul names it delay. My child, remember, this light does not need to overwhelm you. Light brings clarity. It moves with a rhythm of peace, never hurried. It does not pressure you to decide before you have enough understanding. It does not turn intimacy into leverage. It does not use your privacy as currency to purchase closeness. Words that do not carry light often create a sense of urgency. Urgency to believe. Urgency to agree. Urgency to keep secrets for your own good. Light does not need secrecy to exist. Secrecy is only necessary when truth cannot stand on its own. I want you to listen to what remains after the words. When the speaking ends, what is left within you? Peace or confusion, freedom or obligation, openness or a subtle yet persistent pull. Light leaves space. It does not lock you into a role. It does not ask you to protect it with silence. It does not require you to defend what does not align. If you find yourself repeatedly explaining for someone else, explaining their words, their motives, why they are actually good, pause. Light speaks for itself. It does not need you to be its interpreter. There is another subtlety. My child, words without light often awaken old wounds in order to bond. They name your unmet needs, not to heal them, but to position themselves as the source of relief. They make you feel finally understood, and from there, slowly place themselves in an irreplaceable role. Light is different. Light points you back to the source, to God, to truth, to healthy community. It does not keep you for itself. It rejoices when you grow beyond it. It does not fear losing you, because it does not possess you. I am not telling you to stop listening. I am inviting you to listen more deeply to what is said and what is not said, to the rhythm between words and actions, to consistency over time. Listen also to your body, not to let sensation lead, but to let it signal. God speaks through many channels, through scripture, through conscience, through wise counsel, and sometimes through a faint tightening in the chest when words not born of light pass by. You do not need to condemn those words. You simply need not build your house upon them. My child, light does not argue to win. Light does not require your choice under pressure. Light waits steady and consistent until you recognize it. So if today you are standing amid beautiful words, ask a simple and holy question. Does this lead me toward freedom? If the answer is unclear, slow down. Slowness is not missing out. Slowness is protection. When you grant yourself permission to slow down, you give light time to reveal itself. And when light is revealed, you will not need any more beautiful words, because truth, by itself, is enough. You once learned that kind people are safe people. You were taught to value those who help you. That is not wrong. But my child, grace does not bind, and help is not a license to cross boundaries. When someone gives you something and then repeatedly reminds you of it by words or by attitude, what was given has changed form. It is no longer a gift, it has become a tether. The tether is not rough, it is soft, wrapped in smiles and concern. Yet it pulls you so slowly that you do not realize you are drifting away from your own center. There are men who wear kindness like a well-fitted coat. They learn how to help at the right moment, appear at the right time, offer apologies that sound complete, give gifts that seem effortless. But my child, look closely. True kindness does not need an audience. It does not need to be remembered, displayed, or exchanged for access. When kindness begins to function as capital used to buy silence, to buy endless patience, to buy the right to remain after boundaries have been crossed, it is no longer light. It is a transaction disguised in the language of care. I do not want you to become hard-hearted. I want you to become clear-hearted, clear enough to discern motives. Not just behaviors. Behaviors can be learned. Motives are difficult to counterfeit for long. Watch what happens after the kindness. After they help you, do you feel freer, or do you find yourself explaining more, yielding more, enduring more after those gracious gestures? Do you stand taller, or do you begin to shrink, afraid to disappoint, afraid of being seen as ungrateful? Light does not sow fear of displeasing. Light sows respect. There is a particularly subtle form of kindness. Kindness used to gather information. They listen to you attentively, not to understand, but to remember. They learn where you are vulnerable, what you fear, how you were wounded. Then, at a convenient moment, they use those very things to steer the conversation, to touch the precise place that softens you, to guide you toward decisions that benefit them. You feel understood, but my child, being understood is not the same as being safe. Some understand very well in order to control very skillfully. I speak this not so that you would suspect everyone. I speak so that you would place kindness under the light of time. Time always reveals intent. Truly kind people will respect your no. They will not force you to explain. They will not turn your boundaries into a story about their own hurt. False kindness, however, reacts very differently to limits, excessive sadness, excessive anger, or sudden coldness, not because they are wounded, but because the leverage has just been lost. My child, look at the pattern when you comply. Everything feels smooth. When you slow down, the atmosphere shifts. When you agree, the words are sweet. When you ask questions, the tone grows heavy. Light does not change its attitude to punish. Light is consistent. It does not use emotion to manipulate outcomes. If you notice that warmth exists only when you cooperate, that is not care, it is a condition. There are apologies that sound perfectly right, yet never lead to change. There are moments when fault is admitted, but only in areas that do not touch personal interests. There are displays of humility that quickly fade, after which everything returns to how it was. False kindness can calm a situation without healing it at all. It wants to preserve the status quo, not repair the root. Light is different. Light is willing to pay the cost of change. It does not merely say, "I'm sorry." It walks a different path. I want you to remember this. True grace does not make you smaller. It does not require you to walk on eggshells. It does not force you to guess someone else's mood before speaking the truth. It does not demand that you maintain a pleasant version of yourself to keep the peace. If you feel you must shrink in order to retain someone's kindness, then that kindness has become a tool, and that tool does not come from the light. My child, a man with two faces is often very skilled at this in your presence. He appears supportive in your absence. He becomes the one who arranges everything. He uses kindness as a key to unlock information, then closes the door on transparency. He says he stands with you, yet important decisions are made without you. Light does not work behind your back. Light invites you to the table. Light is not afraid of being seen. I want you to grasp a newer principle, one that will help you stop blaming yourself and begin learning how to stand firm again. Intuition is not an accusation against others. Intuition is protection for you. It does not come to tarnish anyone's image. It comes to illuminate your path. You do not need to turn your perceptions into verdicts. You only need to let them be honest data. You have the right to observe without rushing to conclusions. You have the right to slow down without apologizing. You have the right to ask one more question without being labeled untrusting. For genuine trust does not fear questions, it fears blindness. And I do not teach you blindness, I teach you to love in the light. Some signs were overlooked, not because you lack wisdom, but because you once lived in environments where safety depended on pleasing others. You learned to read the room, anticipate intentions, adjust your tone, adjust the truth, adjust your emotions to avoid conflict. Those skills once helped you survive difficult seasons, but as you step into a new one, those same skills can become chains. They cause you to prioritize outward calm over inward clarity. You did not do this because you were foolish. You did it because speaking the truth once came at a cost. But my child, I am teaching you a different way of living now. Peace is not the absence of friction. Peace is the refusal to betray the voice within. And the signs I send often appear precisely where you are about to betray yourself, when you are preparing to say yes, while your soul is saying, not yet. Let me speak about those signs in a new way, without the scent of fear. Signs are not always dramatic. Often, they are simply misalignment. Words may be correct, but the rhythm is off. A smile may be beautiful, yet the eyes are not present. A promise may be generous, but it comes too early, as if trying to bypass foundation to purchase trust. An apology may be well-formed, yet it is not followed by change. Attention may be consistent, yet it carries the feeling of being monitored rather than supported. These things do not require you to conclude that someone is bad. They invite you to ask a different question: what is operating here, life or control? And the moment you are honest with that question, you will feel less confused. There is a truth you must hold tightly. I did not give you discernment to turn you cold. I gave it so you could remain warm without being burned. Love does not need to be naive to remain love. Kindness does not need to abandon boundaries to remain kindness. You can think well of someone and still keep appropriate distance. You can wish to hurt no one and still choose the truth. You can keep a soft heart without allowing yourself to be distorted. This is the art of maturity, and this is what I am doing within you, transforming you from one who only feels into one who feels and discerns, who is gentle yet steady, who loves without rescuing. And my child, stop disregarding your body in this process. You often assume that everything spiritual resides in thought or in higher emotions. But I created you as a whole. At times, discernment comes through disproportionate fatigue, a slight tension in the shoulders, an unusually rapid heartbeat after a seemingly harmless sentence, a headache that arrives right after a meeting, shallow sleep when you are nearing a decision. These are not evidence for condemning anyone. They are signals inviting you to care for yourself, rest, slow down, ask more questions, observe longer, pray more, seek counsel from the wise. You are not meant to live as one being hunted. You are meant to live as one who honors the safety I am building all around you. My beloved child, I want you to pause here a little longer, not to think, but to feel. For there are things in life that are not first communicated through ideas, nor do they arrive by neat and polished arguments. They come through the rhythm of your breath, through a slight tightness in your chest, through a weariness that does not quite match the circumstances, through a small but persistent restlessness. You have grown accustomed to questioning your mind, but you rarely allow your body to speak. You learn to push past it, to ignore it, to adjust it to fit schedules and expectations. Yet, my child, your body is not an obstacle to your spiritual life. It is the dwelling place I chose, and many times, I speak to you through it before you can even name what is happening. Remember the moments when you entered a room and, before a word was spoken, your body changed its rhythm. There was no threat, no obvious sign, yet your shoulders tightened. Your breathing grew shallow. Your mind suddenly became alert. You reassured yourself. It's nothing. I'm probably just tired. And perhaps you were. But it is also possible that discernment was knocking. Speaking in the language of the body, I did not create you as a divided being mind here. Soul there. Body as something lesser. I created you as a living whole. When light touches you, it touches your entire being. And when something that does not belong to the order of life draws too near, the body is often the first to recognize it. I do not want you to fear every sensation. I want you to listen with wisdom. There is a great difference between anxiety fed by old memories and a signal born in the present moment. Anxiety pulls you backward, replaying familiar images, causing you to shrink even when nothing is happening. Discernment is different. It is anchored in this moment, with this person, before this choice. It does not make you panic. It slows you down. It does not shout, it whispers. And if you do not listen, it does not disappear, it simply changes form, heavier fatigue, deeper tension, greater confusion. There are times, my child, when you feel drained after an encounter that should have been normal. There was no argument, no harsh words, no visible conflict. Yet you leave feeling as though you have been bracing yourself for a long time. You have told yourself it was lack of sleep, sensitivity, or the need for rest. All of that may be partly true, but sometimes your body is responding to a lack of integrity, not necessarily a lie, but a misalignment between words and intent, between image and motive. You do not need to draw conclusions from that feeling. Simply acknowledge it. As one notes the weather, today, there are clouds. Understand this, your body does not judge, it signals. When you are in a safe environment, your body softens, your breath deepens, your shoulders lower, your mind opens. You do not have to perform, defend, or edit yourself. By contrast, when you are in an interaction that requires constant vigilance, your body stays tense. You find yourself thinking before every response, anticipating reactions, preparing to be misunderstood. That does not mean the other person is bad, but it may mean that this is not a place where you are meant to lower your shield. And my child, not every place you enter is a place you are meant to remain. You once thought the spiritual life belonged only to the soul and the will. I am teaching you a deeper truth. My presence brings wholeness, not division. When you are near the light, your body also finds rest. When you step into what does not belong to you, your body often carries the alarm while your mind is still negotiating. You do not have to choose between sensation and reason. I invite you to let them speak together in truth. Ask, where does this feeling come from? What is it saying? Is it consistent over time? Mature discernment is never rushed. It watches. There are specific signals you have learned to ignore: a headache that appears after a grand promise, a tightening stomach when you are about to agree to something you are not ready for, restless sleep whenever you think about continuing a certain connection, an unexpected sense of relief when a meeting is canceled. You have called these physical reactions. I call them markers of honesty. They do not tell you to run. They invite you to pause and ask more. And often, when you pause, what you need to know reveals itself. My beloved child, I did not create you to live in constant alertness. I created you to dwell at rest. But rest does not mean ignoring signals. It means knowing where you are and with whom. When you are in the right place, your body agrees. When you are in the wrong place, your body objects politely until you force it into silence. And when it has been silenced for too long, you begin to lose your bearings. Not because your faith is weak, but because you have become separated from yourself. There are truths in life that do not reveal themselves through a single dramatic event. but through small repetitions. Quiet, undramatic, not strong enough to force an immediate stop, yet steady enough that, if you are willing to look, a pattern begins to emerge. I do not always speak in thunder. Often, I draw with tiny dots, placing them just far enough apart for the patient to connect them into a shape. And when that shape appears, it is not meant to frighten you, but to make you clear. You once believed that small things did not matter. You became accustomed to overlooking moments that felt slightly off, not quite comfortable, or somehow incomplete. You told yourself that everyone has awkward moments. Everyone has tired days. Everyone carries small misalignments from time to time, and that is true. But, my child, misalignment itself is not the issue. A pattern of misalignment is. One instance of mismatch may be coincidence. Repeated mismatches, moving in the same direction, become a message, and when a message repeats long enough, it ceases to be a feeling. It becomes an invitation from truth. Observe how the signals appear quietly, humbly. A reply arrives later than usual. A promise is spoken with enthusiasm, yet no next step ever follows. A gaze turns away at the very moment honesty is required. A story subtly shifts its details depending on the setting. An apology comes quickly, but adjustment never arrives. Each time, you tell yourself, "It's fine," and each time, your soul takes note. The soul does not argue, it stores. Eventually, the storage fills, and you feel weary not because you are weak, but because you are carrying too many things that have never been named. I do not speak this so that you scrutinize every word others say. I speak so that you may notice the rhythm. Do speech and action move together? Do promises and follow-through stay in sync? Is presence consistent over time? Or does it flare only when convenient? Light has a steady rhythm. It is not perfect, but it is faithful. It may be slow, but it is straight. Ambiguity is different. It moves quickly when persuasion is needed, and slowly when responsibility is required. It becomes clear when praised and vague when questioned. It grows warm when closeness is desired, and cold when boundaries are set. When these rhythms repeat, they form a pattern, and a pattern does not need much explanation. It speaks for itself. You have tried to adjust your own perceptions to fit someone else's narrative. You have trimmed your intuition to preserve harmony. You have called heaviness just your personality. Distraction, work pressure, hesitation, a lack of decisiveness. But, my child, once a pattern has formed, continuing to correct yourself is no longer humility, it is self-abandonment. I do not invite you to accuse anyone. I invite you back to honesty, honesty with what repeats. Honesty with what does not change even after being named. Honesty with the truth that light does not require many reasons to remain standing. There is a subtle temptation when facing patterns, the urge to search for exceptions in order to deny the whole. You remember a time they were very kind, a day they were genuinely right, a moment when they brought you peace. Those exceptions may be real. But, my child, exceptions do not dismantle a pattern, they only make it harder to see. Light does not require you to collect good moments to justify ongoing misalignment. Light invites you to see the whole with compassion, but without blindness. Compassion is not the protection of ambiguity. Compassion is placing everything in its proper place so that no one must live in the fog. Notice this as well when misaligned patterns repeat. You often begin lowering your own standards. You stop expecting clarity. You stop waiting for consistency. You stop asking questions. You accept mismatched pieces as part of a new normal. And then you call that endurance maturity. But, my child, maturity is not the ability to endure ambiguity longer. Maturity is the ability to recognize it sooner. Maturity is knowing when to slow down, when to ask, and when to say, "This is not for me." Small signals, when repeated, do not demand haste. They ask for order. Order begins with naming. No moral labeling is required. No judgment of motives is needed. Simply name the rhythm. This is inconsistent. This causes me to close in on myself. This does not lead me to peace. When you name it, ambiguity loses its power. It no longer operates in secret. And when ambiguity loses power, you do not need to argue in order to win. You only need to choose. My beloved child, I did not create you to live by beautiful exceptions. I created you to live by enduring truth. Enduring truth is not perfect, but it does not ask you to fragment yourself. It allows you to be fully present with your questions, with your boundaries, with your natural breath. If a relationship, a direction, or a decision continually requires you to shrink, to adjust yourself, to explain on behalf of others, to wait for changes that never arrive, that is not a trial meant to make you stronger. It may very well be a sign that you are meant to walk elsewhere. I also want you to know this so your heart may be at peace. Recognizing patterns does not make you bitter. It makes you awake. You can see a pattern and still offer blessing. You can name things accurately and still remain tender. You can leave without noise. Light does not need dramatic endings in order to be light. Often, light is simply the choice not to continue. When you begin to honor the small signals that repeat themselves, you will notice a strange and gentle relief. You no longer have to keep persuading yourself. You no longer have to argue endlessly within. You no longer have to live in a constant state of wait and see. Instead, you begin to live in a quiet clarity, knowing what nourishes you, knowing what drains you. That clarity does not close you off from people. It opens the right doors. It does not make you love less. It aligns your love in the right direction. My beloved child, there comes a moment when concealment is no longer permitted to continue, not because you have endured enough, and not because the darkness has gone too far, but because the order of light has reached its appointed time to act. That moment is rarely as dramatic as you imagine. It does not require thunder or grand declarations. Often, it arrives as a decisive stillness, where God steps into the undercurrents of what has been happening behind your back and speaks a short, clear word that needs no further explanation. Enough. You may not hear that word with your ears, but you sense it with your whole being. The atmosphere shifts. Invisible ties begin to loosen. Conversations no longer flow as they once did. Doors that used to open out of habit quietly close without explanation. Plans arranged in the shadows start to falter, not because someone interfered, but because light has entered the structure itself. When God says enough, He does not need to name every action. Light, by its very nature, exposes what cannot endure its presence. My child, I want you to understand that this intervention is not revenge. It is protection. God does not shut down what operates in darkness to humiliate anyone. He brings it to an end to prevent further harm, to keep what is good from being bent yet another turn. There are systems that survive on your silence, on your politeness, on your reluctance to make a big deal. But when such a system begins to consume your peace, when it uses your integrity as fuel, when it demands that you keep yielding just to preserve a calm surface, then God rises not against people, but against distortion. The moment of enough often comes when you stop trying to prove yourself, when you stop chasing after every word to fix it, when you remain aligned with your own axis long enough for light to have room to work. You may think you are doing nothing, but, my child, staying rooted in truth is a powerful act. It drains the darkness of its fuel. It weakens operations that depend on ambiguity. And when the force is gone, What once ran smoothly begins to stall. This is not coincidence. It is order being restored. There is something very subtle in this moment. You will not always be given every detail. God does not hand you a transcript of what unfolded behind your back. He does not invite you to replay every conversation. Not because He is withholding from you, but because you do not need to carry that extra weight. Light does not require you to know everything in order to be free. It gives you the outcome of the intervention instead: relief, clarity, the stopping of currents that once exhausted you. Sometimes, knowing too much does not heal. It only pulls you back into rooms you have already been let out of. My child, when God says enough, you may observe very different reactions around you. Some will be confused because the old order no longer works. Some will grow quiet because the levers that once worked have lost their power. Some may appear more polite, more cautious, or suddenly distant. You do not need to read these reactions as signs of victory or defeat. They are simply signs of adjustment. Light is doing its work, and each person will reposition themselves in response to it. What matters most in this moment is not what happens to them, but what is restored within you. You begin to breathe more deeply. You no longer have to guess intentions. You no longer rehearse explanations before speaking truth. You no longer maintain a more acceptable version of yourself just to be allowed to stay. You realize that your peace does not come from being understood by everyone, but from no longer living misaligned with truth. And my child, that is real freedom. I want you to hold on to this so your heart does not waver. The moment of enough does not always mean that everything becomes immediately clear to everyone. Sometimes light works at the root, and the surface needs time to reflect that change. You do not need public validation to trust that the order has shifted. You will know because you are no longer pulled into old cycles. You will know because words that once made you shrink now pass by without hooking into you. You will know because you no longer ask, "Am I wrong?" every time you set a boundary. My beloved child, when God brings the workings of darkness to an end, He also places a new responsibility into your hands, not the responsibility to fix, but the responsibility to keep the light. To keep the light means not returning to old habits. It means not handing back the authority to narrate your life to stages that do not belong to the light. It means not using politeness to veil ambiguity. It means not compromising with half-truths merely to preserve peace. To keep the light is to live consistently, even when no one is watching, because you know you stand before the one who sees all things. My beloved child, there comes a stage in the journey when truth no longer needs to be searched for. It reveals itself, not through confrontation, not through noisy exposure, but through a very natural phenomenon. The mirror begins to crack. The mask that once reflected you, so skillfully echoing your language, borrowing your emotions, learning your rhythm of life, can no longer withstand the pressure of time and light. You do not need to do anything to make it crack. You only need to remain with yourself long enough. When you stop adjusting yourself to fit that image, when you stop feeding the reflection, the mask loses its source of energy. And when it loses its source, it fractures. Remember this at the beginning. That reflection once made you feel understood. You spoke a sentence, and the other answered with the same words, subtle enough for you to believe it was resonance. You shared a value, and it was repeated back to you quickly enough for you to think you were aligned on the same axis. You revealed a wound, and compassion arrived at just the right moment, warm enough for you to lower your guard. But, my child, reflection is not understanding. Reflection is technique. Understanding is presence. Technique can be learned quickly. Presence requires time and honesty. When a mirror reflects without a core, it grows tired. And when it grows tired, it cracks in the smallest places, a response out of rhythm, an overreaction, an unnecessary defense. I do not say this to send you rummaging through the past. I say it so you can name the present. You will notice that what once felt so fitting now feels strained. Conversations that once flowed now require effort. Compliments that once lifted you now make you shrink. This is not because you have changed for the worse. It is because you are no longer supplying material for the mask. When you stop smiling to keep the peace, stop speaking to fill the silence, stop explaining on another's behalf, the reflection has no surface to cling to, and so the cracks appear. My child, a cracked mirror does not expose a bad person in a simple sense. It exposes the emptiness behind the reflection. You will see promises repeated without progress. You will see care that appears only when it is convenient. You will see questions that circle back to you rather than being asked for you. You will see that when you set boundaries, the reflection does not know where to stand because it never learned how to exist without unconditional agreement. This is not the moment to draw conclusions. This is the moment to observe in quietness. Light works best when you do not interfere with heated emotion. There is something very important you must keep for the peace of your heart. The cracking is not your failure. It is the result of your being in the right place. You did not ruin a relationship when the mask cracked. You stopped serving as the foundation for a reflection without a core. When you stand upright, structures that depend on your bending will reveal their weakness. This is not violence. It is the physics of truth. Light does not push, it stands. And what is not stable will fracture on its own. You may feel a very subtle grief at this stage, not because you have lost another person, but because you have lost the illusion of being understood. You grieve the sense of harmony you once felt, even though you now know it was not fully real. Allow that grief to pass through you. It does not pull you backward, it closes a cycle. When you mourn a reflection, you free yourself to seek a true meeting. A true meeting does not repeat you. It stands beside you. It does not learn your words to echo them back. It listens to your words in order to walk with you. I want you to notice a very clear sign. When the mirror cracks, defensiveness increases. When reflection no longer works smoothly, the one wearing the mask often protects the image instead of caring for the relationship. The story becomes circular. Responsibility is avoided. Emotions are amplified to blur the truth. You do not need to name this in argument. You only need not to step into the loop. Light does not win by rebuttal. Light wins by unwavering consistency. My beloved child, there is a strong temptation at this moment. You want to make things clear by saying everything, explaining everything, pointing out the cracks. But listen to me, a mask is not removed by reasoning. It is removed when there is no longer anyone holding it up. When you stop adjusting yourself to preserve that image, the mask slips on its own. When you stop chasing after the reflection to fix it, the mirror shatters into pieces that can no longer be used. And when it shatters, you do not need to gather the fragments to prove anything. You only need to walk on. You will come to realize that at the very moment the mask begins to crack, something else awakens within you, a quiet confidence. Not the loud kind of confidence, but a settled knowing, I no longer need more evidence. You no longer have to ask others whether you are right. You no longer wait for affirmation in order to trust what you sense. You begin to distinguish clearly between genuine resonance and skillful mirroring. And, my child, this discernment does not make you cold, it makes you precise. I want to lay a foundation for what follows. The cracking is not meant to bring anyone down. It restores truth to its proper place. Those who wear masks will have to face their own emptiness, that is their work. You are not called to fill that void. You are called to remain with your own truth. When you do, relationships built on mirroring will quietly fall away, and relationships rooted in true presence will find their way to you. There is no need to rush. A new order always arrives slowly and securely. My child, if you find yourself standing amid fractures, remember this: they are signs of progress. Not every collapse is a loss. Some collapses are liberation. The mirror breaks so that you no longer see yourself through another person's mask. You will begin to see yourself directly, undistorted, unrepeated, unborrowed. And when you see yourself in this way, you will no longer accept cheaper reflections. My beloved child, there are truths that do not need to be hunted down, because they step forward on their own when time has lingered long enough for light to reach spaces once concealed by words. At first, everything appears fine. There are no obvious signs of misalignment. Nothing serious enough to make you stop. Only a very faint sensation, like walking on a road that seems solid, yet feels slightly soft beneath your feet. You keep going. You tell yourself that you are probably imagining it, but time does not ignore soft ground. It applies weight, and when weight is applied long enough, any surface without a core will begin to sink. Words, my child, can support for a while. They can make something unfinished appear nearly complete. They can persuade you that the direction is right, even when the feet remain still. But words were never meant to carry long distances. When you live within a relationship, a promise, or a direction sustained only by words, you will soon discover something very real. You must keep reminding yourself of what was said in order to keep believing. You tell yourself that they mean well, that things will change, that it's just not the right time yet. And each time you repeat these assurances, you spend a portion of your living energy not because you are weak, but because you are carrying the weight that belongs to action. Time does not argue with you about right or wrong. It simply asks its question through repetition, again and again. The same point, the same waiting, the same promise spoken in different ways, yet always leading back to the same place. Nothing has truly changed. There is movement. Yes, but circular movement. You walk a great deal, speak a great deal, feel a great deal, yet, when you look back, your position is hardly different. And here, my child, you are no longer facing a person or a situation. You are facing a pattern. What makes this pattern hard to recognize is not its sophistication, but its familiarity. You are used to listening, used to waiting, used to hoping, used to understanding circumstances, used to placing your kindness ahead of truth. But time is not accustomed to delay. It does not adjust its rhythm to your wishes. It keeps moving, and in its movement it compels everything to answer with reality. When words are no longer followed by action, time does not expose, it drains. It drains enthusiasm. It drains trust. It drains the energy required to keep persuading yourself. My beloved child, there will come a very personal moment when you realize this. You are no longer angry, nor disappointed. You are simply tired. Not tired from trying too hard, but tired from propping up something that refuses to stand. You become quieter, not because you have nothing left to say, but because you no longer want to use words to cover empty space. You slow down not to punish anyone, but because you no longer have the strength to move quickly on unstable ground. And in that slowing, you hear more clearly than ever time is saying what words have long avoided. You will notice a subtle shift within yourself, where once every new promise could reignite hope. Hope now no longer comes from words. It comes from the smallest signs of action, slow, incomplete perhaps, but oriented. You begin to trust what is being done rather than what is being said, not because you distrust people, but because you have learned to honor the rhythm of truth. Truth does not need to be repeated endlessly. It only needs to be lived. You may once have thought that you needed to give more time, but my child, time is not something you grant others so they may become what they speak. Time is space for you to observe whether what is being lived aligns with what is being promised. When you give more time without changing how you see, you merely extend your fatigue. When you give time with awareness, You give light another chance to clarify. And light, when supported by time, does not require you to speak at all. You do not need a confrontation to reach a conclusion. You do not need dramatic proof. You do not need a single, explosive moment of realization. Often, all you need is the quiet honesty of a calm inner knowing that says, "This has not been moving forward for a long time." That calm is not bitter. It carries no scent of resentment. It carries only the scent of ripeness. And when ripeness arrives, you no longer demand answers. You simply know, "My beloved child, what matters is not whether another person keeps their word. What matters is whether you continue to build your life on words when actions are absent." You are not called to judge anyone. You are called to choose the foundation on which you walk. A foundation built on truth can bear the weight of time. A foundation built on words alone will require constant patching. And you, my child, were not created to become a repairer of foundations that were never yours to begin with. When you allow time to do the work on your behalf, something very gentle begins to happen. Your inner arguments fall silent. You no longer rehearse old promises in order to keep hope alive. You stop questioning whether you are being too demanding, too strict, too much. Time has answered through repetition, and that answer, though never loud, is clear enough for you to walk forward without carrying regret. My beloved child, there comes a moment so quiet that outsiders never notice it. But within you it is unmistakable. You are no longer waiting, not because hope has died, but because you have stopped placing hope where it cannot be carried. That moment is not dramatic. There is no grand announcement. It is simply a morning when you wake up and realize you no longer want to explain, no longer want to mend, no longer want to use beautiful words to hold together a structure that has already cracked. You are not angry. You are not bitter. You are simply clear. And that clarity opens something new. The cracks that once frightened you suddenly become exits. Before, every crack made you want to fix things. You believed that if you were more patient, gentler, more willing, everything would eventually hold together. You grew accustomed to living in rescue mode, rescuing relationships, rescuing appearances, rescuing promises. But my child, some things were never meant to be repaired, because they were built from materials that cannot withstand truth. The moment you touch them, you can feel the hollowness, and because they are hollow, repairing them only drains more of your strength. Light does not invite you to become a repairer. Light invites you to become a traveler. The small cracks have been there for a long time. They appeared when words ran ahead of actions, when care was offered without responsibility, when your boundaries were crossed and then dismissed as misunderstandings. You once covered them with explanations, with empathy, with the hope that time would change the other person. But my child, time does not fix faulty foundations. Time only exposes them. And once exposed, staying to repair is no longer faithfulness. It becomes unnecessary self-sacrifice. Notice the subtle shift in how you now see these cracks. Before, you viewed them as your own failure. Perhaps I am not good enough. Perhaps I did not speak carefully enough. Perhaps I need more patience. Now, you see them as information. Not information to accuse anyone, but information that tells you where you are standing. When you see cracks as information, you do not panic. You do not rush. You simply recognize that this structure is not meant for your journey. And that recognition is far lighter than the effort of trying to save something that cannot carry you forward. My beloved child, walking away from a fractured structure is not running away. Running carries fear. Walking carries order. You walk not because you have won, but because you no longer need to win. You do not need to prove who is right or wrong. You only need to choose where to place your feet, and where you stand must be able to bear the weight of truth. When you step away, you do not tear anything apart, you leave along cracks that already exist gently, precisely, without noise. You may have once believed that you must wait until everything is fixed before you are allowed to move on. But my child, not everything must be repaired before you are permitted to live. There are moments when life requires you to walk away so that what is unhealthy no longer holds power over you. Staying to wait for repair can sometimes be another form of delaying the truth. Light does not ask you to wait until everyone agrees. Light asks only this: are you willing to honor what you have already seen when you choose to step forward? You will notice something deeply true. Not everything behind you collapses. Many things remain still, and it is precisely that stillness that confirms your decision. You do not need to drag along what no longer wishes to move. You do not need to carry promises that have worn thin. You do not need to play the timekeeper for a melody that has lost its rhythm. You step forward, and what belongs to you will find a new cadence. What does not belong to you will remain where it is, without needing your judgment. My child, there is a very human fear that arises when you pass through this exit, the fear that you left too soon. The fear that you did not try hard enough. The fear that regret will follow. But listen to me, regret most often comes when you betray your own clarity, not when you honor it. When you walk in peace, even a peace that is still fragile, you are standing on the ground of truth. And that ground, over time, will become firm. You do not need a guaranteed future in order to move. You need the integrity of the present. You will notice a clear shift in your body and in the rhythm of your life. Your shoulders feel lighter. Your breathing deepens. Conversations no longer require long mental preparation. You no longer have to guess intentions, patch emotions, or ask yourself, am I being too much? That steadiness does not come because everything is resolved, but because you have stopped standing in the wrong place. And my child, being in the right place even when nothing is perfect yet is always easier to breathe in than remaining in the wrong place. No matter how many promises are made there is one important thing I want you to hold as you step through this exit. Do not turn back to tidy things up. Do not turn back to say more so it feels complete. Do not turn back to be understood, not because you are dismissive, but because you respect order. Some things only need to be left, not explained. Excessive explanation is sometimes a way of prolonging a connection that no longer has the capacity to nourish. Light does not require you to finish every story. Light requires you to place the period in the right place. My beloved child, when cracks become exits, this is not a tragedy. It is a quiet grace. That grace does not lead you out with trumpets, but with a door open just wide enough for you to pass through without being wounded. You do not need to carry every memory with you. You only need to carry the lesson of clarity. That lesson will protect you in the journeys ahead, not through rigid vigilance, but through gentle awareness. Beloved child, there are moments when truth does not arrive as a discovery, but as a confirmation, not because you never knew, but because you had never dared to name clearly what you knew. When that moment comes, it carries a shock that is very gentle, yet very deep, so gentle that others may not notice, yet so deep that you cannot return to your former state. The shock lies not in new information, but in the sharpness of what was once vague, and immediately after that shock, what surprises you most is not pain, but peace, a strange peace, quiet and untriumphant, simply the calm of standing in the right place. You once waited for decisive proof, a confession, a moment of exposure. But truth rarely conforms to expectation. It comes the way light does. It does not overwhelm you. It simply leaves you no longer lost. When the name is spoken correctly, not the name of a person, but the name of a pattern, a motive, a way of operating, every piece falls into place. You do not need more details. You do not need further explanation. You simply know that from that moment on, you no longer have to question yourself. And the end of that questioning is a great gift. The initial shock may cause you to stand still, not because you do not know what to do, but because you are allowing the truth to pass through your whole being. You feel it in your mind as clarity. You feel it in your emotions, a wave of sorrow, then a settling. You feel it in your body, lighter shoulders, deeper breath. True truth does not tear you apart, it reorders you. It does not take away what belongs to you, it gives back to you what you have been carrying for too long without knowing how to lay it down. My child, I want you to understand that this shock was not meant to punish your faith. It does not say that you were wrong to hope, to wait, to believe in something good. The shock says only one very simple thing: your hope was placed in the wrong location. And when that is named correctly, hope does not die, it changes direction. It turns back to where it has a foundation to stand on, where truth and action meet. You do not become harder after the shock, you become more precise. There is something very important you must hold on to, so you are not pulled into an emotional spiral. Clarity does not require you to go back and prove anything. It does not demand confrontation in order to legitimize your decision. Clarity is already enough. When a name has been spoken correctly, you do not need to repeat it. You do not need to persuade others to call it the same. You only need to honor what you have seen. Light does not need a crowd in order to be light. It only needs to stand. You may experience a brief interval of space, not emptiness, but a pause. This pause appears when an old structure leaves and the new one has not yet fully formed. Do not rush to fill this pause with activity, explanations, or quick decisions. The pause is where peace takes root. It is there that you learn you do not need to hurry to prove that you are fine. You are fine because you are living truthfully, not because everything has been resolved. Beloved child, when clarity comes, you will notice a subtle shift in how you look back at the past. You no longer need to retell the story with a voice of self-blame, nor do you need to exaggerate the role of others. The story naturally condenses into its core truths: what was present, what was missing, what did not align. That simplicity is a sign of healing. When you no longer need to add layers in order to understand. You have already passed through the storm. I know you may have once feared that if the truth were revealed, you would collapse. But the opposite happens. You stand more firmly, because you are no longer standing on speculation. You are standing on the ground of what has been named correctly. That ground is not glamorous, but it can bear weight. You can place your whole self upon it without fear of sinking. And when you stand firmly, peace does not need effort to arrive. It comes naturally. Like breath, when you are no longer holding it in. You may find that you do not want to speak much about this shock, not because of shame, but because you do not need to explain. Some truths are deep enough to be held in silence. That silence is not lonely, it is full. It gives you time for new decisions to grow from the roots, not from reaction. You do not need to rush to redefine your life. Simply live in alignment with what you have seen, one small step at a time. My child, the peace that comes after the shock is not forgetting. It is acceptance without resistance. You accept that some things did not unfold as you hoped. You accept that you stayed longer than was necessary. You accept that you learned the lesson in your own way. This acceptance does not seal the past away. It places the past in its proper position behind you, no longer steering you. I want you to carry this with you as you step out of this passage. When a name has been spoken correctly, you do not need to move quickly. You have already left confusion. That is the greatest step. What remains is steady walking, holding new boundaries, listening to a new rhythm, choosing a new foundation. You do not need to impose your clarity on others. You only need to let it shape your own choices. And those choices, over time, will speak on your behalf. Beloved child, there are pains that do not come from a single explosive moment, but from a deep, quiet fading. They do not arrive like a storm, but like familiar ground suddenly losing its firmness beneath your feet. You're not pushed down, you simply stop, bewildered, because what once supported you can no longer carry its own weight. What hurts you is not a specific action by someone, nor a clear event you can name. What hurts is realizing that what you trusted most, what you placed closest, what you gave the greatest influence, was not solid enough to carry truth all the way to the end. That wound is not loud, but it spreads, because it touches the place you once believed was safe. When pain comes from the center, your natural reflex is to turn inward and ask where you went wrong. You search your memories, review every decision, every word, every moment you opened your heart. You try to find a mistake to correct, a misstep to learn from. But my child, here is a truth that needs to be set back in its proper place. You did not see wrongly because you lacked discernment. You saw through the heart of someone who believes in life. That heart is not the problem. The issue is that you placed your heart in a center that had not yet been tested long enough by time and responsibility. Recognizing this does not weaken you, it begins to mature you in a deeper way. Betrayal from the center always carries a sense of disorientation, because you do not just lose a relationship or a belief, you lose the way you once arranged your inner world. You use that point to balance yourself, to decide, to move forward with confidence. When that point collapses, you do not know what to lean on. But it is precisely in that space that light begins a very quiet work. It does not rush to fill the gap. It does not hastily replace. It does not lead you to a new center to cling to. Light gives you time to stand without leaning, to breathe without constriction, to feel the full weight of truth without needing to run from it. There is a very subtle kind of regret that accompanies this type of wound. You do not only grieve a person or a circumstance, you grieve a version of yourself, the one who once believed that center would remain forever. You miss the sense of safety you once had, the simplicity of faith before it was tested, the days when you did not need to be so guarded or discerning. My child, let that regret pass through you without rushing to push it aside. It does not pull you backward. It marks a transition from faith without boundaries to faith with roots. Only those who have once believed deeply can feel this kind of regret. And precisely because of that, it does not make you smaller, it makes you deeper. The light keeps you from breaking by not forcing you to be strong too soon. It does not push you back toward the old center with familiar advice, nor does it rush to construct a new center for you to cling to. Instead, the light teaches you something harder, yet more enduring, how to stand in truth without false supports. In this season, you may feel as though you move more slowly, speak less, and decide more cautiously. This is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you are learning to place your weight firmly on solid ground, rather than suspending it from structures that have not yet proven their ability to hold you. After the wound at the center is exposed, you will notice a clear shift in how you open your heart. You do not close the door, but you no longer leave it wide open as before. You become more selective not because you distrust everyone, but because you have learned to distinguish between closeness and safety. You begin to see that not everything near you has the capacity to hold you, and not everything distant is a threat. Safety is not found in proximity or titles. It is found in consistency over time, in actions that align with words, in responsibility that is upheld even when no one is watching. Beloved child, something very beautiful happens when the old center collapses and you do not break. You learn how to rest within yourself. Not isolation, not building walls, but abiding. Abiding is when you no longer run to someone else for reassurance, no longer need an external voice to confirm what you already know within. You begin to trust your own rhythm, your discernment refined through experience. This abiding does not make you distant. It makes you more present in every new relationship, because you no longer carry the need to be rescued or held together by another. Betrayal from the center also teaches you an essential lesson about power. You realize that when you give too much authority to a person or a structure, you unknowingly place your peace in their hands. And when they are unable to carry that weight, you are the one who pays the cost. The light does not condemn you for having entrusted. It simply invites you to learn how to entrust rightly. There are parts of you meant to be shared, and parts meant to be kept as sacred ground. Not everyone who enters your life has the right to enter the center. When you understand this, you do not become closed off, you become ordered. You will find that after this wound, the rhythm of your life changes in a very quiet way. You no longer strain to preserve harmony, no longer guess unspoken expectations to avoid conflict, no longer reshape yourself to fit what was never clearly asked of you. At first, this rhythm may feel empty, because it lacks the familiar noise. But in that stillness, you realize you are no longer being pulled off your axis. And when you are not being pulled, you do not break, even when new frictions arise. Beloved child, remember this as you pass through this stretch of the road. A wound that comes from the center is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to teach you to recenter rightly. When your center no longer rests in a person or a fragile structure, but in truth, in life, in a lasting order, you will not need to shut your heart tight. Your heart remains open, but open in a protected direction. And a heart that opens in the right direction is not a fragile heart. It is a heart that has learned how to stand upright in the light. Beloved child, after all that is past, I do not call you to rush forward. I call you to slow down, not because you are weak, but because you have entered a new season, a season where clarity matters more than speed. Before, you may have thought you needed to understand quickly, decide early, and move on without hesitation. Now, I show you something different. A sustainable life is not built on haste, but on conscious steps, where each choice is placed with understanding and peace. You will discover that as you slow down, many things that once disturbed you lose their power. Words that once confused you no longer hold you captive for hours. Looks that once made you doubt yourself no longer define how you see who you are. Not because you have grown numb, but because you no longer live on the surface. You have learned to go deeper, deeper into your own sensing, deeper into what gives you life, deeper into a truth that does not need to argue to remain true. At this stage, you begin to discern something very simple yet deeply important. Not everything requires a reaction. In the past, you often felt the need to respond, to explain, to clarify. Now you understand that there are things that only need to be seen and then left alone. Maturity is not found in how well you speak, but in knowing when speech is unnecessary, when you are no longer pulled into every conversation. Your energy is preserved for what truly matters. My child, slowing down also means that you begin to listen to yourself more closely. You can hear when your body is tired, when your heart needs rest, when your mind has taken in enough. You no longer force yourself to appear fine just to please others. You allow yourself to pause, to breathe deeply, and to choose your rhythm again. This does not set you back. On the contrary, it keeps you from going the wrong way. For moving fast on the wrong path only exhausts you, while moving slowly on the right one will still bring you where you need to be. You will also notice that the relationships around you begin to shift, not because you are trying to change anyone, but because your rhythm has changed. Some people can no longer keep up, not because they are bad, but because they were accustomed to an older version of you the version that was always ready to adjust, always ready to endure, always ready to explain. When you no longer live that way, the difference naturally appears. You do not need to cut anyone off. You only need to live truthfully. Those who are aligned will remain. Those who are not will quietly step away. Beloved child, I want you to understand that this season is not a season of loud, dramatic decisions. It is a season of small but right choices. Choosing to rest when rest is needed. Choosing to say no when your heart is not at peace. Choosing not to enter situations that require you to trade away your clarity. These choices may seem simple, but they are building a new foundation, one that does not rest on fleeting emotions, but on understanding that has been refined over time. You may be surprised to find that your life no longer carries as much drama as before. The highs are softer. The anxieties no longer dominate your inner world. You may think that your life has become less. In truth, it has become deeper in peace, deeper in presence, deeper in the quiet, knowing that you are living in alignment with what you know to be true. This is not a season for proving anything to anyone. This is a season for resting in the truth. My child, as you slow down, you also begin to recognize what belongs to you and what does not. You no longer carry responsibilities that were never yours. You no longer try to fix problems that others must face themselves. You understand that love does not mean carrying things on another's behalf. And help does not mean sacrificing yourself. This clarity makes you lighter not because life has fewer difficulties, but because you are no longer bearing more than your share. I know there are moments when you ask yourself, am I being selfish for choosing to live this way? Listen to me. Caring for your truth and your peace is not selfish. It is responsibility. When you live in clarity, you not only protect yourself, but you also create a healthy space for those who truly wish to enter your life in the right way. Your peace does not impoverish anyone. It simply reveals which relationships were built on pressure rather than respect. Beloved child, this part opens into a new stretch of the journey, quiet, unhurried, yet deeply steady. You no longer need dramatic signs to know that you are walking in the right direction. You know because your heart is calm. You know because your body is no longer tense. You know because you no longer have to convince yourself each day. When you live this way, it is a clear sign that you are walking with me, neither ahead of me nor behind me. My beloved child, I want you to understand something very simple, yet often overlooked. Your life does not change direction because of rare, monumental decisions, but because of small choices repeated each day. You once thought there had to be a visible turning point, a marker everyone could see, a moment strong enough to divide before and after. But the truth is that most deep transformations happen quietly. They happen when you choose to wake a little earlier to breathe in stillness before the day begins. When you choose not to reply immediately to a message that unsettles your heart. When you choose rest instead of pushing further. When you choose to speak truth gently rather than remain silent to preserve false harmony. These choices are not recorded or praised, but they are rewriting your direction. You will notice that each time you choose what is right, even in small ways, something else happens as well. You spend less energy repairing consequences. Before, you may have been used to rushing to patch up hurried decisions, explaining words spoken incompletely, carrying outcomes that were never yours to bear. Now, as you choose to slow down and choose rightly, you no longer need as much energy to clean up what lies behind you. This does not make your life easy overnight, but it makes your life orderly. And that order is a sign that alignment is being restored. My child, there are very small choices that carry great weight. Choosing not to step into a conversation when you know it will pull you down. Choosing not to tell more of your story to someone who does not know how to keep it. choosing not to promise when you are not certain you can follow through, choosing not to sacrifice your peace just to be acknowledged. These choices may make you feel as though you are becoming less connected, fewer opportunities, less of a voice. But in truth, you are clearing away the noise so that what is real can finally have room to appear. Life does not need many things to be steady. It needs the right things. You will also notice that these small choices gradually change how others relate to you. Not because you force anyone to change, but because your boundaries have become clearer. When you are no longer available for ambiguity, for worn-out promises, for disrespectful demands, those who are used to pushing limits will feel uneasy. Some will step back. Some will adjust. You do not need to control those reactions. Your task is simply to keep your choices consistent. Consistency is not loud, but it is deeply persuasive. My beloved child, do not take lightly the daily choice to care for your body. Choose to eat enough, sleep enough, rest at the right time. These are not luxuries. They are the foundation of clarity. A tired mind struggles to discern. An exhausted body easily agrees to things that contradict the truth within. When you honor your body, you are protecting your capacity to choose well. And when that capacity is protected, you fall into old cycles far less often. There will be days when you doubt yourself. You will wonder whether these small choices truly make a difference. Remember this, not every choice yields immediate results. Many right choices are like seeds. At first, nothing seems to happen. And then one day you look back and realize you are standing somewhere else. You are no longer in the middle of old tensions. You are no longer pulled into familiar situations. You no longer have to convince yourself that it will be fine. The fine began with those quiet choices. My child, I want you to learn to value ordinary days, the days without major events, without strong emotions, without dramatic decisions. It is in those days that you practice choosing the right rhythm, choosing to work with just enough focus, choosing to rest when you are tired, choosing kind words without display, choosing silence when words are unnecessary. These practices are training you for the long road. The long road does not require constant excitement. It requires endurance and honesty. You will also discover that as you choose well each day, your fear of the future diminishes. Not because you know in advance what will happen, but because you trust your ability to choose. You know that even as circumstances change, you can still choose what brings you life. That confidence does not come from other people's promises. It comes from the lived experience that you have chosen well many times in small things. And that experience becomes a true anchor. My beloved child, do not compare your process with anyone else's. Some move faster. Some are louder. Some have clearer milestones. But you are moving in the right direction. And that matters more than speed. Direction is determined by the choices you repeat when no one is watching. When you are faithful to those choices, you do not need to worry about where you will end up. You will not be lost. I want you to carry with you a simple truth as you move forward each day. You are casting a vote for the kind of life you want to live by what you agree to, what you refuse, what you nurture. No vote is too small. When you vote long enough for truth, for peace, for life, the result will gradually appear not as a victory, but as a place. My beloved child, stay with me in this moment, for what I am saying is not meant for haste. I have weighed every quiet word, not only the words spoken loudly in the light, but also the whispers behind closed doors, the stories told when you were not present, the intentions wrapped in politeness. Nothing escapes my sight. I do not need you to explain, nor do I need you to defend yourself against what you cannot control. I am the one who sees the motives behind every word, and I am the one who holds the scales of justice. Those scales are not shaken by fleeting emotions or the pressure of the crowd. And, my child, those scales are shifting right now, quietly yet surely. You once feared that what happened in secret would never be touched. You wondered whether my silence meant neglect. But my child, my silence is never indifference. It is the time I allow all things to reveal their true weight. Some words need time to prove their emptiness. Some actions need time to expose their motives. I am not in a hurry, because I do not need to be. When I place my hand upon the scales, I do so at the right moment so the adjustment does not break you, yet is strong enough for order to be restored. Therefore, do not fear the time you think has been lost. Do not look back on the years you waited, hoped, and trusted, only to reproach yourself for believing you should have moved sooner. I do not measure your life by the perfection of your decisions, but by the honesty of your heart. Nothing you have walked through has been wasted. The days you thought were delays, I used to sharpen your discernment. The months you believed you were standing still, I used to separate you from attachments that could not walk the long road with you. Time in my hands is never lost. It is transformed. My beloved child, I am the one who restores. I do not restore by taking you back to an old point to repeat the same cycle. I restore by opening new paths, where you carry the wisdom you have gained without bearing the old weight. I return what was once delayed, not always in the form you expected, but in the way that is right for who you are now. Some things I return through new opportunities. Some things I return through new people. Some things I return through a freedom you were not yet ready to hold before. I multiply what was once withheld, not only resources, but capacity. The capacity to focus, the capacity to decide, the capacity to remain with the truth without fear. You will notice that what once scattered you, filled you with doubt, or caused inner contradiction is gradually leaving your life. Not because you are forcing it out, but because I am rearranging your center. When the center is rightly placed, sources of interference have nowhere to cling, and when they have nowhere to cling, they fall away on their own. My child, I also heal what was worn down by misaligned connections. I know there are wounds that did not come from one dramatic event, but from the slow erosion of trust while you remained in relationships that were off axis. You tried to understand. You tried to hold on. You tried to reconcile, and in that process, you were scraped, not bleeding, but aching beneath the surface. I do not paint over those marks to hide them. I heal from the inside, so that when you touch old memories, you no longer recoil. My healing does not make you forget, it frees you from being governed by what has passed. You will see my restoration expressed in very concrete ways. Doors that once creaked, opened and closed again, or required you to strain just to pass through, will open wide, more gently, more clearly, not because you have become stronger, but because resistance has been removed from the path. I do not push you through doors that demand you trade your peace. I open doors where, as you step in, your breath is not constricted. You will know they are my doors, because you will not have to persuade yourself to walk through them. Connections that once faded not for lack of love, but because they were clouded by misunderstanding and guarded words, will see someone return and call you by your true name, not to reopen the past, but to restore order. And there will also be connections that do not return, because they belonged only to an earlier context. My child, do not fear this distinction. I do not take away what you need. I preserve only what can live with you in the light. I am restoring your focus. You will notice that you no longer have to pull your mind out of old loops. Voices that once made you doubt yourself no longer hold the same power. You see more clearly what needs your involvement and what does not. This focus does not come from rigid discipline, but from inner steadiness. When your heart is at rest, your mind becomes clear. When your mind is clear, your steps grow sure. Your rhythm of walking is being restored as well. Before, you may have rushed for fear of being late, slowed down for fear of being wrong, or stood still for fear of losing something. Now, you will walk to the rhythm of truth, neither hurried nor delayed. You will no longer need to push yourself with constant effort each day. You walk because your inner world has been ordered. And when your rhythm is ordered, you no longer compare your path with others. You know you are on the right road, even if that road is quiet. My beloved child, you are now entering a different way of living, not because every problem has disappeared, but because you no longer allow them to govern you. Before, a single old memory could stop you. A vague word could throw you off course. A small doubt could send you into hours of self-examination. Now, those things still exist somewhere in the world, but they no longer hold the reins. You move forward not by your own strength, but by the understanding that you do not need to go back in order to live rightly today. I see you learning to let the past remain in its proper place, not denying it, not rejecting it, not forcing yourself to forget it. You simply no longer carry it into every new decision. You understand that the past may teach, but it must not drive. When you discern this, you no longer have to battle memory. Memory becomes instruction, no longer a verdict. And my child, that is a very real sign of freedom. You are also learning something simple now that once felt difficult to you. Not every emotion requires action. When sadness comes, you allow it to be there without rushing to fix it. When fear appears, you look at it directly instead of running away. When regret passes by, you acknowledge it and then let it go. This kind of maturity does not make you dry or hardened, it makes you steady. You are no longer swept along by emotional waves into decisions that later leave you with regret. My beloved child, living in this new rhythm also means you no longer have to prove that you have changed. You do not need to explain at length what you have learned, what you now understand, or what you have left behind. Your life will speak for itself when you choose peace over argument, clarity over ambiguity, rest over constant strain. Those around you will naturally notice the difference. You do not need to persuade them. Consistency over time is the strongest testimony. I know there are moments when you wonder whether this slower rhythm might cause you to miss something. Listen to me. You are not missing what truly belongs to you. Anything that requires urgency just to be held was never meant to remain for long. Your new rhythm is not slow out of fear. It is slow by intention. It gives you enough space to see clearly, enough quiet to hear what is stirring within, and enough time to choose well. Within this rhythm, you are no longer pulled back into old cycles. You will also notice that the relationships entering your life now carry a different quality, not more in number, but more genuine. Fewer promises, more action, less drama, more respect. You are no longer drawn to things that shine brightly but lack foundation. You recognize the value of steadiness, of words aligned with deeds, of presence that does not need to announce itself. This does not make your life monotonous, it makes it safe. My beloved child, there is an important shift in how you now face the future. Before, you may have felt anxious because you did not know where everything was heading. Now, you do not need to know everything. You only need to trust that each day you are able to choose rightly. The future is no longer a vague mass of anxiety. It becomes a series of days you step into with awareness. When you trust your capacity to choose, fear gradually loses its power. I also see you learning to release responsibilities that are not yours. You no longer try to fix other people. You no longer carry emotional burdens that you did not create. You understand that love is not the same as rescuing, and loyalty is not limitless endurance. When you lay these burdens down, you do not become selfish, you become honest, and that honesty protects you from repeating old paths. My child, this new rhythm does not ask you to be perfect. It only invites you to be present. Some days you do well, some days you are tired. Some days everything is clear, some days you need more time. I do not leave you on the days that feel unfinished. I walk with you even in slow steps. What matters is not how fast you go, but that you do not return to places that once made you smaller. You will find that as you live this way, peace is no longer something rare. It becomes the ground beneath you. From that ground, you work better, love more healthily, and rest more fully. You no longer have to separate your outer life from your inner life. The two gradually become one. You live as who you are without performance, without armor. And my child, that is the freedom I desire for you, my beloved child. I want you to know that true freedom does not arrive like a violent wind scattering everything in its path. It comes like a morning after a long night without announcement, simply revealed when you open your eyes and realize the air has changed. You no longer have to tense yourself just to stay upright. You no longer have to guess other people's intentions in order to protect your peace. You no longer have to convince yourself that you are fine while tension tightens inside. My true freedom does not make you rigid. It makes you clear. And when you are clear, you need very few words to prove anything. There is something I want you to understand clearly at the beginning of this section. Freedom is not about leaving someone or escaping a situation. Freedom is about no longer being held from the inside by something outside of you. You may still live with familiar responsibilities, encounter familiar faces, and walk familiar roads, but you are no longer driven by fear, by a sense of indebtedness, by vague guilt, or by the need to be accepted. My freedom places the power of choice back into your hands. You are no longer pulled along. You begin choosing each small action, each word, each meeting, each place where you invest your time and energy. My beloved child, as you step into this freedom, you will notice a very concrete change. Certain traps no longer attract you the way they once did. Invitations that used to stir excitement now pass without resonance. Compliments that once softened you now reveal their lack of depth. Promises that once kept you waiting now meet a gentle smile as you let them drift by. Because you have learned to ask simple questions. Is this true? Is it lasting? Does it carry life? You are not asking out of suspicion. You are asking because you have matured. I also show you that freedom does not mean the absence of pain. Freedom means pain no longer makes decisions for you. You may still remember what happened, but memory is no longer a Rhine. You may still be cautious, but that caution does not close you off. It guides you rightly. You may still have moments of heaviness, but you no longer panic when they come. You know how to return to me, to your breath, to the truth within. You no longer circle endlessly looking for an external anchor, because you are beginning to recognize the anchor I have placed in me and in the inner dwelling I have given you. My beloved child, true freedom also transforms how you see others. You no longer view them through the need for their approval. You are no longer as afraid of being misunderstood. You no longer live to satisfy every gaze. When that burden is lifted, you become lighter and more upright. You can be kind without being exploited. You can help without losing yourself. You can love without rescuing. And this makes your love cleaner, less mixed with fear, less mixed with self-defense. I want you to remember this. My freedom always comes with something else, the responsibility of light. You are not free to live carelessly, to speak carelessly, to choose carelessly. You are free to live rightly. You are free to stop pretending. You are free to say no without feeling guilty. You are free to pause when your heart is not at peace. You are free to walk away from what is ambiguous without giving long explanations. This is freedom with order, and it is precisely this order that keeps you safe. My beloved child, this part is the doorway into a new season. You will no longer measure your life by the rise and fall of daily emotions. You will measure it by direction, and your direction is becoming clear. You are stepping into a place where you can breathe deeply, live truthfully, and no longer be pulled back by things that have lost their authority. I am not saying everything will become easy at once, but I am saying you will no longer be bound, and a life that is no longer bound, even with challenges, is still a life filled with real hope. My beloved child, freedom cannot sustain itself if you do not learn how to set boundaries. I am not speaking of high walls that leave you isolated, nor of hardness that closes your heart. I am speaking of boundaries as the contours of life, where you know where you end and where others begin. When you had no boundaries, you thought you were loving more, but in truth, you were trading something away, trading peace, trading clarity, trading yourself. The freedom I give you does not require you to erase yourself. It requires you to stand in your rightful place. You have grown accustomed to saying yes to avoid disappointing others. You have learned to nod along to preserve harmony. You have learned to remain silent so as not to be seen as difficult. But my child, every time you say yes while your heart is saying no, you let a piece of your freedom fall to the ground. Not everyone will pick it up and return it to you. Many will step over it without noticing, and you become weary not because you have done too much, but because you have not been honest with yourself. I am not calling you to become someone who refuses everything. I am calling you to become someone who chooses. Choosing is different from resisting. Choosing flows from inner steadiness. When you say no from a place of steadiness, you do not need long explanations. You do not need to defend yourself. You do not need to over-apologize. You simply say no because you have seen clearly. And once you have seen, continuing to say yes would pull you off the path I am leading you on. My beloved child, the greatest fear that keeps you from setting boundaries is the fear of loss. Fear of losing relationships. Fear of losing opportunities. Fear of losing approval. Fear of being misunderstood. But listen to me, anything that only stays when you lose yourself was never truly yours. True connections do not break when you set boundaries. They become clear. True opportunities do not disappear when you say no. They wait for you in another form, one that does not require you to sacrifice the life within you. You will notice something very real when you begin to set new boundaries. Some people will be surprised. Some will be uncomfortable. Some will withdraw. This is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that the order has shifted. When you are no longer easily pulled, familiar forces lose their leverage. I do not leave you to walk through this alone. I am with you to keep your heart from hardening. My boundaries do not produce bitterness, they produce respect. I want you to learn how to say no in the rhythm of light. There is no need to raise your voice. No need to prove anything. No need to retell the entire story. You can say no by stopping your response when a conversation drifts off course. You can say no by leaving a place that disturbs your peace. You can say no by not making promises when you are not ready. These kinds of no are not loud. They hold the foundation steady. My beloved child, new boundaries also change the way you love. You no longer love by doing everything for others, carrying everything for them, enduring everything in their place. You love by standing where you are meant to stand, allowing others the space to stand in their own portion. Loving this way is not cold, it is healing. It does not control, it liberates. When you do not take over another person's responsibility, you are not abandoning them, you are honoring them. And when you honor them, you also honor yourself. You will come to see that boundaries do not make you less, they make you whole. whole enough in energy to live a full day, clear enough in discernment to choose what is right, peaceful enough not to be pulled back into old cycles. In the past, you may have spent enormous strength trying to keep everything okay. Now, you use that same strength to live rightly. This difference is not loud, but it reshapes the entire rhythm of your life. I also want you to understand that boundaries must be kept repeatedly. Saying no once is not enough. You must say no consistently so that truth has time to take its stand. Some will try again. Some will ask in a different way. Some will retell the story in a tone meant to stir guilt within you. Do not be afraid. That guilt does not come from me. I give you peace, not burden. When you hold your boundaries in peace, you will see the guilt slowly dissolve. And respect, if it is there to grow, will begin to take root. My beloved child, your freedom is not preserved by sheer willpower, but by daily faithfulness. Faithfulness to what you have seen. Faithfulness to the rhythm I have placed within you. Faithfulness to truth, even when it is simple. Boundaries do not need to be perfect to be effective. They only need to be true. When you set true boundaries, you do not need to monitor who understands and who does not. Light will take care of that. My beloved child, I want you to know this truth clearly after you step into freedom. The noise does not disappear forever. It will return not because you have done something wrong, but because the world is not accustomed to a person who can no longer be pulled along. That noise may take many forms: old invitations dressed in new clothes, familiar emotions resurfacing on days when you are tired, old memories knocking when you have just found calm. But the greatest difference now is this: you no longer have to follow the noise. You have learned how to remain. Remaining does not mean standing still in life. Remaining means staying present with me, present with yourself, present with what is truly happening within you. Before, when the noise appeared, you often reacted immediately, explaining, fixing, analyzing, or blaming yourself. Now, I invite you to do something different. Pause for one beat. Just one beat. In that beat, you breathe. You sense your body. You notice what is being activated within you. And in that moment, you choose to remain with me instead of running after old reflexes. My beloved child, much freedom is lost, not through great want-to, catastrophic decisions, but through small, repeated reactions. A message that tightens your chest, a sentence that awakens an old feeling, a glance that makes you question yourself again. If you react immediately, you will be pulled back into the old orbit you worked so hard to step out of. But if you remain with your breath, remain with truth, remain with me, you will see that the noise holds no lasting power. It is loud because it is about to lose its place. I want you to understand that presence is not about controlling your mind. Presence is about not abandoning yourself. When you are tired, you admit you are tired. When you are confused, you do not force yourself to be clear too quickly. When you are sad, you allow the sadness without assigning it false meaning. In all these states, I am there. I do not love you more when you are strong, and I do not leave you when you are weak. Remaining with me is remembering that you were never meant to handle everything on your own. My beloved child, there are times when the noise returns in a very subtle form. It does not shout. It whispers. It says, just this once. Maybe I'm overthinking. Perhaps I should be more flexible. If I stay silent, things will settle. These words sound familiar because they once helped you survive. But hear me clearly. What helped you survive does not always help you live well. Now, I do not want you merely to exist. I want you to live in the freedom that has already been paid for you to have. Top of form, holding freedom through presence, also means that you do not return to renegotiate what I have already made clear. When I have shown you a truth, you do not need to reopen the discussion simply because of temporary emotions. Emotions come and go, truth remains. You may feel longing, regret, or tenderness. Those feelings do not make you wrong, but your decisions do not need to follow every emotional wave. You remain with me, and in that remaining, you allow emotions to pass without steering you away. My beloved child, presence also helps you discern between my calling and the noise of fear. My calling is not hurried, not pressuring, not panic-inducing. It is clear, yet gentle, firm, yet peaceful. The noise of fear, by contrast, always demands immediate reaction, always paints the worst-case scenario, always convinces you that if you do not act right now, everything will collapse. Remember this, I do not lead you through panic. When you stay long enough, you will recognize which voice is mine. You will notice that the more you practice presence, the less you are pulled into drama, not because you have grown cold, but because you are no longer emotionally hungry. You do not need intensity to feel alive. You do not need drama to feel worthy. Your life becomes deep and steady. This may cause some people to see you as different, even distant. But, my child, you are not distant. You have come closer to yourself. I also want you to know that remaining with me is not a rare, grand gesture. It is a small, daily practice. You remain when you turn off your phone earlier. You remain when you choose not to answer a provocation. You remain when you choose rest instead of proving yourself. You remain when you offer a short but sincere prayer rather than many empty words. These small acts are anchoring your freedom to the ground so it is not carried away by the wind. My beloved child, there will be days when you do this well, and days when you forget. When you forget and are pulled off course a little, do not condemn yourself. Come back. My freedom is not so fragile that it shatters because of a misstep. I do not keep a ledger of failures. I keep open arms to receive you again. Each time you return, you are a little stronger, not because you tried harder, but because you remembered where you belong. Remember this as you move forward. Freedom is not sustained by tense vigilance, but by continual intimacy with me. When you are close to me, you do not need to focus on the noise. It quiets itself. When you are far from me, even a whisper can confuse you. So choose closeness not through great effort, but through honest moments. My beloved child, you are now standing at a very particular boundary, the boundary between an old season and a new one. The old season no longer holds you as it once did, yet its traces may still linger in memory, in habits, in the way you react to the unexpected. The new season does not require you to rush to catch up. It only asks you to step in with clarity of heart. I am not calling you to become someone else. I am calling you back to what I placed within you from the beginning, a life of order, peace, truth, and freedom from fear's control. You have walked a path. Many do not see the path of stopping yourself, examining yourself, asking the right questions, and choosing a different rhythm of life. You have learned that not everything that looks bright is safe, and not everything familiar belongs to you. You have learned that love does not mean holding on at all costs, and forgiveness does not mean returning. These lessons have not made you hard, they have made you ripe. And when you are ripe, you do not need to speak much about your maturity. You simply live, for your life will speak for itself. My beloved child, I want you to step into this new season without carrying the need to prove anything. You do not need to prove that you were right. You do not need to prove that someone else was wrong. You do not need to prove that you are strong or that you are fine. The urge to prove always steals peace, because it makes you live under the gaze of others. Your new season is not built on people's eyes. It is built on inner truth. When you live aligned with that truth, you will feel lighter, and when you are light, you will be clear. In this new season, you will realize that I am not merely closing a door, I am opening an entirely different way of living. You will step into opportunities that do not require you to sacrifice yourself in order to keep them. You will encounter relationships that do not demand you trade your peace just to remain. You will do work that leaves you tired but not depleted, because it moves in the right direction and carries meaning. This new season is not a season without challenges, but it is a season in which you are no longer bound by the old ones. You will also see that a new season often begins very simply. It does not always come with trumpets or dramatic signs. Many times, it begins when you wake up and feel your heart a little calmer, when you no longer react the way you used to, when you know what you need to do without asking too many people, when silence no longer frightens you. These small things are signs that you have crossed a threshold. Do not dismiss them. I often do great work through small things, so that you may keep what I give you for a long time. My beloved child, this new season is also a season in which you learn to trust me in a more mature way. Not trusting because your emotions are lifted, but trusting because you have seen my faithfulness in ordinary days. You have seen me pull you away from what did not belong to you. You have seen me restore order. You have seen me reset your pace. Now I invite you to keep walking without haste, without anxiety, simply walking with me. When you walk with me, you do not have to guess the future. You only need to be faithful to today. My beloved child, entering a new season is a grace, but keeping a new season is a daily choice. I do not say this to make you afraid, but to help you understand the nature of the road ahead. A new season is rarely lost through a single dramatic event. More often, it is worn down by old habits, returning quietly, without noise, without drama, just a familiar feeling that whispers, "It's probably fine." And it is precisely there that I want you to remain awake. You have lived in an old rhythm for a long time, even though that rhythm tired you, diminished you, and caused you to doubt yourself. It carried a strange pull familiarity. Human beings are not only drawn back by what is harmful, they are also drawn back by what is familiar. So when you step into a new season where things are calmer, clearer, and healthier, there may be moments when it feels unfamiliar. And in that unfamiliarity, the old cycle will call out, "Come back here. At least you know how to respond." My child, I want you to discern clearly familiar does not mean right. The old cycles no longer hold real power, they only hold memory. They cannot pull you unless you choose to step in. And often you do not step in because you want to hurt again, but because you are tired, or soft-hearted, or because you believe you are strong enough now to handle it differently this time. But my child, not everything needs to be handled again. Some doors only need to remain closed. Keeping the new season through consistency means you do not betray what you have already seen. You have seen what drains you. You have seen what makes your heart tighten. You have seen what throws your life out of rhythm. Do not doubt that light just because today you miss an old feeling. Feelings are not a compass. Truth is the compass, and truth does not shift with mood. My beloved child, there will be times when the old cycle returns, not through people, but through ways of thinking. You will hear familiar voices in your mind. Am I asking for too much? Should I be a little more flexible? Should I endure a bit longer? I want you to stop right there. Those questions once kept you in places you have already outgrown. They no longer fit who you are now. A new season requires a new language in your mind, the language of truth, of healthy boundaries, of self-respect that has been healed. The consistency I speak of is not rigidity. It is faithfulness to the rhythm that has been restored. faithful to resting when rest is needed, faithful to not responding immediately when your heart is not at peace, faithful to not entering conversations that require you to shrink yourself, faithful to choosing clarity over ambiguity. These things may seem small, but they are the very fences that protect your new season from being invaded. Top of form, my child. There is a very subtle temptation in the new season, the temptation to prove that you have changed. You may feel drawn to return to old places just to show that you are now stronger, wiser, no longer affected. But I tell you this, in love you do not need to prove your growth by going back to what once wounded you. Maturity does not require an audience. Maturity is revealed in the fact that you no longer need to return. Holding the new season also requires you to learn how to accept peace. In the past, you were accustomed to intensity, to anxiety, to constantly managing and fixing. Now, as your life becomes quieter, you may sense that something is missing, but that is not emptiness, it is space. Space for you to breathe deeply, space for you to hear me more clearly, space for what is right to take root in its proper time. Do not rush to fill that space with unnecessary busyness. My beloved child, consistency will also test you in new relationships. When you no longer react as you once did, when you are no longer predictable, when you are no longer willing to endure endlessly, some will test your boundaries, not because they are bad, but because they are used to the old version of you. This is the moment to keep the new season by explaining less. Lengthy explanations are often a sign that you are doubting yourself. You do not need to convince anyone of the boundaries I have placed within your heart. Let time and consistency speak for you. I want you to remember that the new season does not require perfection in order to survive. It requires return when you drift. If one day you notice that you have slipped back into an old reaction, an old pattern of thought, do not panic. Do not condemn yourself. Pause and return. Return to me. Return to your breath. Return to what you know to be true. The new season is not lost by a misstep. It is lost only when you remain in the old cycle. And I know you will not remain there anymore. My beloved child, I am teaching you to live a life not built on fleeting excitement, but on sustainability. Sustainability is not flashy, but it carries you far. It keeps you from rebuilding from scratch every year. It allows you to preserve what I have given you. And when you hold the new season through consistency, you will find that your life is no longer divided into stable moments and chaotic moments. You begin to live as one in light, in peace, in truth. Now pray like this, Lord. I come before you today not with all the answers, but with a heart that has walked through much and is learning not to deceive itself anymore. I confess that there were times I stayed in familiar places out of fear of change, fear of loss, fear of facing the truth. But today, I choose to step out of that fog. I ask you to place your light into the deepest places of my heart, the places I once avoided, the places where I made excuses, the places where I stayed silent to preserve false peace. Give me the courage to see what you are revealing, and when I see it, grant me the strength not to turn away from that light. Lord, I offer to you the connections that no longer nourish life within me, the ties that exhausted me, that caused me to shrink, that required me to sacrifice peace just to remain. I release them now, not out of bitterness, but out of a choice for truth. Help me let go without resentment, leave without hostility, and move forward without carrying weight. Cut the invisible cords that have bound me to old cycles, so that I may walk freely in the new rhythm you have set for me. Lord, grant me gentle yet firm discernment, not suspicion that closes my heart, but clarity that opens it in the right places. Teach me to recognize the difference between what is familiar and what is safe, between pleasing words and faithful actions, between light and beautifully decorated appearances. When I stand before choices, let me hear your voice above every other noise. And when I hear it, give me the courage to follow, even when the path is not crowded. Lord, teach me to set boundaries without guilt. Help me understand that saying no does not cost me your love, nor does it make me selfish. Enable me to say no to what misaligns me, so that I can say a full and honest yes to what you are giving. When others do not understand, keep me from over-explaining. When pressure rises, help me remain steady in peace. Let my boundaries not become walls, but fences that protect life. Lord, I trust that you are the restorer. Restore the years I thought were lost. Return to me the focus that was scattered, the rhythm that drifted, the joy that was once suppressed. Heal the wounds within me left by misaligned attachments, not merely covering them, but healing them at the root. Lead me through doors that open in peace, where I no longer have to strain or convince myself that it will be okay. Lord, teach me to remain with you when noise returns, to remain with my breath when emotions rise, to remain with truth when old memories knock. Help me not to react out of habit, but to respond with presence. When I am tired, allow me to rest. When I am confused, free me from the pressure to have immediate clarity. Remind me that I do not have to carry everything alone, for you are with me in every breath. Lord, help me hold the new season through consistency. Do not let me return to old cycles simply because they are familiar. When I am tempted to compromise, remind me of what you have already revealed. When I feel the urge to prove that I have changed, give me the humility not to return to places that once wounded me. Make me faithful in the small, daily choices, knowing that they are what keep my life steady. Lord, place within me a peace that does not depend on circumstances, a peace that does not need explanation, that does not require intensity, that is strong enough to hold me steady as everything around me changes. Let that peace become my foundation, from which I work, love, rest, and decide. Help me recognize that when my heart is at rest, I am in the right place. Lord, I step into this new season with gratitude and gentle reverence. I do not demand immediate clarity. I do not run ahead of you. I choose to walk with you. Do not let me carry old habits, old reactions, or old fears into where you are leading me. Teach me to live honestly in the new season without proving, without shielding, without performing. Lord, I entrust this entire journey into your hands. What I understand, I offer to you. What I do not yet understand, I also offer to you. Keep me from returning to places you have already pulled me out of. Keep my heart soft, but not weak, steady, but not rigid. Let my life become a quiet testimony that true freedom is found in living in truth and staying close to you each day. I trust, I remain, and I continue forward with you. Amen. I offer this prayer in the holy name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so that together we can continue building a strong community of faith.